Welcome to the East Kansas Agri-Energy Virtual Tour. You are about to see one of the newest and most technologically advanced ethanol production facilities in the world. East Kansas started as a dream back in December of 2000 by the members of the Anderson County Economic Development Board. Once the dream was alive, members of the development group began organizing and raising seed money. In October 2001, East Kansas Agri-Energy LLC was born. Through a lot of perseverance and many man-hours later, construction would begin. The official groundbreaking ceremony was October of 2004. A short 9 months later, construction was complete. On June 15, 2005, the plant began production. Today, your virtual tour will walk you through the entire process from grain receiving all the way through to the final product. The intent is to give you some insight on what the facility looks like and how the process of making ethanol works. The process begins with grain. Here at East Kansas, we consume nearly 40,000 bushels per day of grain, which consists of corn and milo. We use corn and milo because they consist of about 70% starch. The production process takes the starch and converts it to sugar. We then feed the sugar to yeast, which produce ethanol as a byproduct of their metabolism. The ethanol is then refined and sold as fuel ethanol. The first step of the process is to grind up the grain. We use hammer mills to pulverize the grain and expose the starch particles. We then create a slurry mixture by adding water and enzyme to the ground grain. The enzyme is a chemical that is used to break the starch down into sugar. We actually use two different enzymes in our process. The first enzyme breaks the starch chains down into shorter chains, and then the second enzyme breaks the shorter chains down into single sugar molecules. We then pump the slurry into our cook system, where we are sterilizing the slurry. Once the slurry is sterilized, we then add additional enzymes and break the starch completely down into sugar. At this point, the slurry is now called mash. We then add dried yeast and mash to a fermenter and let it sit for about 50 to 55 hours. The yeast consume the sugar and give off alcohol, creating a mixture that we call beer. We then boil the ethanol out of the beer in the distillation system. The bottoms from the distillation system become animal feed. The feed is either sold as a wet product or as a dry product. The wet feed is called wet cake or wet distiller's grains and is 65% moist. The dry feed is called dried distiller's grain or DDG and is 10% moisture. The distillation removes the alcohol from the mash, creating 190 proof alcohol, or 95% ethanol and 5% water. We then further dehydrate the 190 proof to 200 proof alcohol, or 100% pure ethanol. The last step of the process is to denature the ethanol by adding about 5% gasoline to the product. This step renders the product unsuitable to drink. Today, we produce just over 100,000 gallons of ethanol each day, which equates to 12 to 15 semi-truck loads. We also produce about 15 trucks per day of wet feed and about 8 trucks per day of dry feed. And this concludes your virtual tour of our facility. We hope you've enjoyed the video and that you have learned something new along the way.